Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Nuggets have shipped Michael Porter Jr. off to Brooklyn for Cam Johnson. Also, the Steelers are bringing in Jalen Ramsey after a blockbuster trade. And do the Falcons have enough surrounding Michael Penix Jr.?
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Michael, the possession ends here. Porter Jr. has been traded to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. Locked On Nuggets host Matt Moore breaks down the move.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've been speculating now for, I will say, really about a year, talking about trading a part of the core. I have just lamented the fact that the Denver Nuggets have not made a significant trade since March 25th of 2021, acquiring Aaron Gordon for Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and a first-round pick. And then now you see the Nuggets kind of doing a repeat of 2022, where I think they find an under-the-market player that hadn't been moved or traded because of situations around him. I think the Nets were hoping they were going to get real assets back for Cam Johnson for the last couple of years, weren't able to get the deal they were looking for. But the Denver Nuggets, I think, being as desperate as they are, I think, to not just acquire talent, but also, I think, to get underneath that second apron and first apron. And I think the move from the NBA to say that instead of a 10% increase, it's going to be a 7% increase, as Ryan Blackburn talked about, that also played a part in this. So getting $17 million less on your expenditures through this trade, getting a 28-year-old Cam Johnson, who last year, I would say, at the number 2 option for the Brooklyn Nets, 19 points per game, 48% from the field, 39% from three on 7 attempts a game. Also being a positive wing defender and being a little bit of an on-ball creation wing as well. There are so many different things that Cam Johnson does that I think the Nuggets said, we looked at the OKC series, we looked at the playoffs. If we just had another guy that could dribble, that could shoot, and could defend, and someone we could trust when it comes down to it, we would be in a different situation. So I'm telling you, I think the Nuggets, they looked at the surviving landscape and said, not only Ryan Blackburn and Matt Moore can this be in the addition of Cam Johnson, we're also going to be able to make moves on the margin through the roster and through the budgetary means that we have now. So I'm really excited about this move. I think the Nuggets swung and they absolutely nailed this trade.
Ryan, via Yossi Goslin, who runs capsheets.com. He used to work at Hoops Hype, and he does a great Substack you should subscribe to. Yeah, they get they're getting the 14.1 million mid-level. They open up the 14.1 million mid-level, and they have a 16.8 million trade exception.
Wow.
They've saved $40 million with this move.
Okay.
Stan Kroenke's having a good day too.
Yeah, I would say Stan Kroenke's just partying. Let's go.
Well, they're under the luxury tax. They'll probably be back in that by the time they get done with all this. That's why somebody in the comments was talking about, like, did we really have to give up the first round pick? Yes, you did. 1, you probably weren't getting Cam Johnson without a first round pick. 2, it's not just about the value of Cam for MPJ, which I'll get to in a second. It's the financial savings. And I will tell you this, like, the Grizzlies offered a first round pick and players last season for Cam Johnson and thought they had to deal with the Brooklyn Nets. So, like, there was already a market assessment here. Go ahead.
But Matt, how much of this do you think is the Nets also saw this and they saw something favorable? But just as simple as you talked about the relationships in the NBA, the secondary relationships in the NBA, Matt, you just said this mean everything. How much is it that Jordi Fernandez is in the room now, having conversations with the Nets front office about Michael Porter Jr., trusting who he is and the work that he puts in, that they felt comfortable enough making this trade and also really doing it for a very limited amount of assets? The only upside is the Nets might argue to get a better player maybe in their brain, but they get it one unprotected first that's years later. Matt, I think Jordi Fernandez being there, I think that also that part is part of the reason why the deal got pushed through in the first place.
Can I say something real quick? I want to use at least a minute here to just talk about Michael Porter Jr. and how much he gave to the Denver Nuggets and has consistently invested in just being the best version of himself that he can possibly be. He has worked so hard to stay on the floor. He's worked so hard to win a championship with the Nuggets. He adapted his game. He did everything that he was supposed to do. He was rewarded for that with a contract, immediately got hurt and had to have a third back surgery. Not his fault. That's not his, that wasn't ever his prerogative. He became overpaid, but not by his own choice, not by his own volition. I think that the Nuggets were right in paying him the contract that they did. And I do think that there was very high levels of potential here for him to continue to grow. And then the Nuggets needed him because he got hurt to just buy into a role after that. And he did. And he was willing and able to be good enough on the defensive end, good enough as a floor spacer, get to the corner. That was the big thing coming out of 2022 training camp, was just do your job, get to the corner, buy into a role. And he did. And so I want to give him at least one shout out here, because he does deserve that credit and is somebody who I think, in all of this, it's going to be belittled, his role. Cam Johnson, very excited. Everybody's very happy for him. Michael Porter gave a lot of time to Denver and a lot of years.
You can stay up to date all year on the Denver Nuggets by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Nuggets on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Your Locked On Sports Today coming up. The Steelers are adding Jalen Ramsey. Before we get to that, we get some more NBA free agency moves. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Houston Rockets have signed Dorian Finney-Smith to add to their improving roster.
The Houston Rockets come out hot to start 2025 NBA free agency, signing Dorian Finney-Smith to a 4-year, $53 million contract, and then nabbing Clint Capella on a 3-year, $21.5 million deal. What's up? This is Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets. Rockets have been crushing it this offseason, and it continues on in free agency, getting DFS reuniting with their old big man Clint Capella to knock it out of the park moves here. Let's start with DFS. Adding one of the premier 3-and-D wings in the NBA to a team that is already stacked with premier wing defenders. The Rockets defense has a significant chance to level up once again this next season. And look, they needed a replacement for Dillon Brooks, who was collateral in the Kevin Durant trade. So the DFS signing makes a ton of sense. And then for Clint Capella, he's going to occupy the third-string center role behind Alperen Sengun and Steven Adams, but he gives the Rockets an ability to take a different look at that 5 spot, because Capella is a, athletic, vertical spacing, lob threat kind of big. You've got Steven Adams, who's your more traditional bruising, rebounding big, and then Alperen Sengun, who's one of your star players, a skilled scoring and playmaking big. And the Rockets had so much success with the double big lineups this past season, in particular in the playoffs against the Golden State Warriors. It's like Ime Udoka saw the success of that and was like, you know what, go get me a third big to throw into the mix. And the Rockets can run different variations of that double big lineup, whether it's Sengun and Adams or now Sengun and Capella possibly. The possibilities, the lineup permutations are kind of endless. The Rockets now enter next season as one of the deepest teams in the NBA with all their offseason moves and these two most recent acquisitions. And there's still optimism internally at their ability to keep Cam Whitmore and his ridiculous upside even after making these two free agency signings.
The Atlanta Hawks are throwing $62 million in Nickeil Alexander-Walker.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland. I am the host of the Locked On Hawks podcast, and the Hawks go out and add a player they were certainly tied to the last couple of weeks, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, coming to Atlanta from Minnesota in a sign-and trade. The Hawks sending out a second-round pick and some cash, but for the most part, just kind of adding Alexander-Walker without too much pain. 4 years, $62 million, a player option. The structure is still TBD as I record this, but Atlanta adds a very good player on a very reasonable contract in the middle of his prime. Alexander-Walker has been durable the last couple of years in Minnesota, a good defender, can shoot a little bit, handle the ball a little bit. The Hawks have still some more needs after losing Karis LeVert to Detroit in a relatively similar deal for 2 years, but Alexander-Walker is younger and certainly would have been, I would say, prioritized by the Hawks over LeVert in this instance. the Hawks continue to have a very good offseason so far, adding Porzingis, adding a kind of home run draft day trade to secure a big time asset for the future, adding Asa Newell, and then now adding Alexander Walker with much more room to come on the mid-level exception, being available still for Atlanta. And the first day of free agency, the Hawks are doing what they were supposed to be doing all the way through, adding talent at a reasonable price, planning for the future, and they're set up very, very well. We'll get into this, some more ramifications of this deal, the future, and more on Locked on Hawks.
The Mavs add D'Angelo Russell on a 2-year deal.
There it is, the worst kept secret for the Dallas Mavericks. D'Angelo Russell is joining the Mavs, 2-year, $13 million deal, where the second year will probably be a player option. We'll see what happens with that one. But D'Angelo Russell joining the Dallas Mavericks, and this is going to be fine. This is going to be a good deal for the Dallas Mavericks. D'Angelo Russell was making $18 million last year, so to get him on this deal is kind of a steal. He brings a lot of shooting. The Mavs are going to need some more shooting next to Cooper Flagg, next to Anthony Davis, and those centers. With Kyrie Irving out, they need another playmaker as well. And D'Angelo Russell is a good passer. He can set up an offense. He's going to struggle defensively, but the Mavs have a back line of, Jason Kidd has suggested they're going to start Cooper Flagg, PJ Washington, Derek Lively, and Anthony Davis. So that back line is going to help him defensively. He has had some decision-making issues in the past and has had some real struggles like playmaking in the playoffs and actually shooting in the playoffs, like a 38% shooter in the playoffs from the field, which is not good. But the Mavs only really need him to fill some spot minutes before Kyrie comes back. When Kyrie comes back, his role is going to be much smaller, and we'll see what happens then. But a solid deal for the Mavericks, a steal actually at that point. He's worked with Anthony Davis before. He has chemistry with him, and so this could really help the Mavericks in the regular season.
Pittsburgh Steelers have traded for Jalen Ramsey to bolster their secondary. Locked On Steelers host Chris Carter broke down the trade.
But I thought there was no way. They're like, they got so many other things they got to work. They got to get wide receiver 2. They got to go do this. They got to do that. They're not going to go get Jalen Ramsey. And then they went and did that. And not only do they do that, but they trade away one of their pillar players involved in it, and that's Minkah Fitzpatrick, the multi-time all-pro star safety for the team who has had a couple down years, but still has been a pillar of this defense. I did not see this coming. This is Omar Khan wheeling and dealing with this Steelers roster to get changed. You cannot say the Steelers are stagnant. You cannot say the Steelers aren't taking swings, aren't making changes, are just settling for the same old, same old. They are making moves. They are being aggressive. They are taking big chances. And that's exactly what this trade is. And on top of it, you get Jonnu Smith. We'll get to Jonnu Smith in a bit. That's also another thing that is just wild to me that he's somehow involved in this. But the Steelers getting Jalen Ramsey basically for Minkah Fitzpatrick in the straight up involvement here. Is this a good thing for the Steelers? I got to be honest with you. I don't know. I think I've been one of the people, if you've watched this channel and Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, I have been a staunch advocate for the position that Minkah Fitzpatrick is not washed, that he was in a position where, hey, teams were picking at Dante Jackson, at a young Joey Porter Jr., at a weakened slot cornerback position. And so they didn't need to really go at him as much in the Steelers secondary. And that didn't allow him to play Minkah ball, as he has talked about, which in his time with the Steelers, since they traded for him from the Miami Dolphins in 2019, he had been an elite player for most of the time that he'd been in Pittsburgh. And that to me was like, okay, I can see the film. I can see what he's doing. Oftentimes in the secondary, he is keeping the play in front of them. Whenever there's a big play going deep, quarterbacks couldn't take the deep shot because he was there. And so it forced teams to have to dink and dunk their way around the Steelers instead of just taking the top off the defense like we had seen in years when Minkah Fitzpatrick wasn't the free safety and they were kind of relying on some sketchy play at the free safety position. So I thought for sure, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he's not going to go anywhere. They like him. I mean, heck, I just wrote a story for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette where about a month ago when we were looking at OTAs and I was talking to Minkah Fitzpatrick, he literally told me he was talking about, when it comes to communication, and I'll try to find this clip for the show when we do it in full. He talked about how if we're talking on communication, when I say thumbs up, you say thumbs up. If I say thumbs down, you say thumbs down, and we go and we do this and he said, quote, if you don't want to do it, talking about communication, you're not going to be here. We're instilling that in everybody. Minkah Fitzpatrick, a team captain basically for the Pittsburgh Steelers, was saying that was June 4th, not even a month ago, within the month of June. He was saying after a Steelers practice that if you don't want to do it, you're not going to be here. And then he's the one that's not in Pittsburgh. that got me asking a lot of questions because, in my opinion, it was not him that it was the problem in the secondary as much last year. It was more Cam Sutton. It was more Dante Jackson when he got injured. And then the Steelers didn't have enough answers at cornerback. And then it led to communication breakdowns. And that led to just exposures in the defense. Because now your secondary, your safety room is going to be Deshaun Elliott, and it's going to be Juan Thornhill, who you traded for, who I thought would be a great third safety option. But now he basically is your free safety unless another move is coming. But let's look at the bigger part of this move. They're adding Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey, a former All-Pro cornerback himself. He's still been a pretty good cornerback the last several years. He missed the Pro Bowl last year with the Dolphins, but that broke a string of 4 straight years of being a Pro Bowl corner. He has 3 times been a first-team All-Pro corner in the NFL. He's 31. He'll be 31 in October this year, so he's still within like the prime range of his career. He's still not over the hill, but Jalen Ramsey adding to this defense. Now, as I said before, when people ask me, do you think they're going to get Jalen Ramsey? I didn't think so. I thought that they'd be happy with Joey Porter Jr., with Darius Slay Jr., and Corey Trice, the junior secondary. We talked about this, and I thought they'd with Corey Trice with these guys that they're going to be fine with their depth. They're not fine with their depth. They're saying we're going and we're adding, we're being aggressive. And to me, this signals a new day when it comes to Omar Khan. And not that this one move does it by itself, but it continues to show Omar Khan is not resting on his laurels. He's not sitting here and saying, well, we got players. We're just gonna watch and see how this plays out. He is making big swings in the Steelers front office. I mean, you think back even just the past few years, the turnover this team has shown. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. If you had said to me that when the Steelers were 7-3. Were they 7-3 in 2023 with Kenny Pickett before they lost, or was it 7-4, whatever it was they were before they went on that losing streak with Kenny Pickett, and then they got injured. He got injured, and then Mason Rudolph had to come in and save the season after they went to 7-7. If you had told me before that Kenny Pickett injury that in the next 2 years the Steelers quarterbacks would be Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, I would have said you're on crack cocaine. I would have said you're on drugs and you need to go get some help. But maybe that was me who was on drugs, because here's Omar Khan coming in and saying, nah, we're not settling for things. We're making big moves.
Stay up to date all year on the Pittsburgh Steelers by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Steelers on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Falcons need to make life easier on Michael Penix Jr. Falcons are rocking with Michael Penix at quarterback this season. Locked On NFL hosts Tyler Rowland and Louis DiBiase discuss whether or not Atlanta has done enough to support their young signal caller.
Look, and Aaron is one of the most knowledgeable guys on the network, and especially with his Falcons, but I guess I just push back on the idea that I feel comfortable with Penix. And you're right. He is a high floor player. I think he's going to be – it's funny because they get him after they sign Kirk Cousins, and I think he could maybe be a Kirk Cousins level player, but that's just what I think. I think it's likely that it's that, but to act like we know that already and to look at some of the other more bona fide – I have more questions about Michael Penix than Jake Matthews. I have more questions about Michael Penix than Drake London or Bijan Robinson, the defense. Yeah, you could make that argument. I don't like their defense necessarily as much as you do because they're so reliant in the pass rush on young players, and I have to bring this up. I bring this up every time we talk about the Falcons because it's insane. Matt Williamson from Peacock and Williamson first brought this to my attention in their show, but 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, the Atlanta Falcons, least amount of sacks in the NFL. So you're right, but can that big gamble that they made on trading up to get James Pierce and then taking Jalen Walker earlier, you do think that that's enough to kind of fix the pass rush enough for this team to maybe be a playoff contender?
Yeah, I think, and it's very projection based, right? Because for me, James Pierce is somebody that is what I thought was the best pass rusher in the draft outside of Abdul Carter. So for me, I do think that he's a guy that was worth trading next year's first round pick for. I think Jalen Walker was one of the best edge rushers in this class. It is projection based, but when you combine those two with the proven ability of Leonard Floyd and Ibikiti as the fourth guy in that rotation, that's great to me. Like, yeah, is he the number one guy in a rotation? No, but had 6 sacks last year, had 6 sacks his rookie year. He's only in his third year as a former second-round pick. I loved their draft pick on day 2 of Xavier Watts. I think, the best ball hawking safety in that class. Plus, you have AJ Terrell. You have some proven players like Jesse Bates back there. I push back as well on Aaron's point. I think that Falcons roster, like if you compare it to last year's Commanders team that Jaden Daniels took all the way to the NFC Championship, I think this Falcons team has a lot more pieces. So if Penix supposed to be that guy in the same class that Daniels was, then the Falcons have more than enough to compete in the NFC. I think if you're comparing their roster to a lot of other teams on that tier, like Chicago and Green Bay, Los Angeles, Arizona, right, Washington, it's right there. So I don't, he's the Falcons guy, and I believe what he's saying, and I trust him, but I like the roster on paper. It's on paper, but I really like it.
WNBA is leveling up again. The league officially announced it's expanding to 18 teams by 2030, with Cleveland in 2028, Detroit in 2029, and Philadelphia in 2030, all set to join the growing movement. The 3 cities follow Toronto and Portland, who will debut next season, and each new team is backed by NBA ownership. This marks the W's biggest expansion wave in decades and a major vote of confidence in the league's rising popularity, revenue, and viewership. Detroit and Cleveland may even revive the Shock and Rockers names, but officials say they'll listen to fans before committing. Philly, meanwhile, is building a new arena and possibly a new East Coast rivalry. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, can the Lakers keep LeBron happy enough to stay in LA? So at least until tomorrow, stay Locked On Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.